it's Jeff Black again, your BFP Dream Builder from Beachmont Ford Performance, out here in the garage again because it's time for a new episode of Garage Table Discussion. So this episode is going to be kind of a follow-up to a Facebook post that I did a week or so ago. This post drew a lot of attention, got a ton of comments because I think the subject was something that people are extremely passionate about, and that is the Ford Mustang. That's right, the Ford Mustang been around now for 58 years. So 58, 59 years ago, this gentleman right here, Gale Halderman, he came up with this design, and that became the original Mustang. This sketch right here is the original sketch that Gale drew and became the Ford Mustang. Matter of fact, Gale, I was fortunate enough to have known Gale a little bit, and I'm friends with his family, and he lived not too far up the road from us in Tip City, Ohio. And Gale, when he started off at Ford, was kind of known as the farm boy from Ohio. And he struck gold with this here sketch, and that led to a 40-year career at Ford. He became the head of design and so forth. So we went from this to this over the last 58 years or so. And obviously the Mustang's gone through a lot of changes. So the article basically was titled more or less, Ford has a problem with the Mustang and they know it. And basically the problem is selling the Mustang to the younger generation. So the older, I'll say the more mature, older crowd is getting older, and those were the main buyers for Mustangs. And the younger people apparently aren't buying as many Mustangs. And the question was, well, why? And what is Ford going to do about it? Now, my post, I started off the headline with the question of, if you were in charge at Ford, what would you do to entice the younger crowd to the Mustang? And man, like I said, lit up with comments. So we're going to follow that up today. And I will say that the majority of the comments were along the lines of, and I picked 4 people, there were a ton of comments, but for example, these 4 people all said the basic same thing, which was I'd say the overwhelming majority of over 100 and whatever it was, 60 comments, I think. Jim Allen, Josh Dominguez, Stacy Mint, and James Burgess all were right on the nail with the fact that they said, hey, the problem is the car has become too expensive for younger people to purchase. And I will clarify here that I think we are talking, well, I know I am, and I think in general most of the comments were geared toward the fact that we are talking about the Mustang GT, the V8. Yes, there's an EcoBoost out there that is more affordable, but let's be honest, I know when I was growing up and I wanted a car, I didn't want this little 6-cylinder. No, I wanted the V8, and I wanted the sound of the V8. And I think even our younger people right now still want that. They want some of that power, and they want the sound. So, yeah, the Mustang GT, a base Mustang GT right now is probably going to be around $37,000, which is a lot of money, even for a little bit older generation. So, the younger people, that seemed to be the big comments. It's just gotten too expensive. Now, John Simon had a couple of comments that also, to me, rang true, and that was the fact that not only is the car a little bit on the expensive side for the younger people, but the insurance rates for a GT V8 would be high too. Now, granted, when I was younger, and a lot of the people in my age bracket, we had the same issue. The insurance was always going to be a little bit more expensive. So that's kind of a wash to me, because that's going to be the same now as it was, 20, 30 years ago. But John also brought up the comment that back in what we'll call the older days, I know around, I think, 1990, I had one of these, and he brought back the idea that maybe they ought to bring out an LX version. So an LX version, I had a 5.0 LX in around 1990, I think it was. And it wasn't a GT, but it had the 5-liter engine in it, so I still had the V8. I couldn't really afford the GT, but the LX, hey, I could get into that, and then you can kind of add on to it and build on it, which is what we've always done with Mustangs, right? But it was a lot less expensive than the GT. Now, again, one of the other comments that came up, and again, there were a ton of them, so I've only picked out a few people, but Dylan Holt. Dylan made the comment that, you know, whether you're younger or older or whatever, basically, if you're not a car person, then you're not going to be buying the car. So I think he was getting at that a lot of the younger people just aren't car people now like we were or I was when I was growing up. I don't know if I totally believe that one either. But he still did say that, hey, a middle-class income earning individual has to really want one of these to be able to go ahead and justify buying it and budgeting for that payment. So those people that really, really want one are going to somehow find a way to buy it. I get that, and I agree with that. Now, back to some of the other comments. Pete Morris, for example. Pete also brought up the LX version, but his comment also to me rang true, whereas I think you might need to get this car down to a price range of at least maybe $30,000. And I don't know, sometimes I wonder why we couldn't do that, why Ford couldn't do that. I don't know. I'm sure there are reasons, but that is the key, to try to get a version of the car down in that price range. Now, I had a comment from Rob Red Jones. Now, I've met Rob a couple of times at some shows out of state, and great guy, very, very big Mustang fan. And he also brought up the fact, again, about coming up with a even more base version of a GT without a lot of the options. And he said, call it the Mustang, make it your masterpiece, which again, start off with the bare necessities and move on. Now, I realize that there are some limitations nowadays with government regulations and all. You're not going to be able to get away without having the backup camera. You're probably going to have, obviously airbags, some of the other features, but there's got to be a way that I would think Ford could cut this thing down to a little bit more bare bones car and maybe find a whole nother market. Now, one other comment that came up, and again, this is just the fact of maybe naming a car, but it's still the same thing. Come up with a lower level Mustang GT. And Jonathan, I hope I pronounced your last name right, Jonathan Gergel, said, hey, how about a Mustang ST version? So, I don't know. But the point is that a lot of people were commenting, and the general comment came down to, hey, we got to find a way to make this car less expensive to attract the younger crowd. I had one gentleman that made a comment that I think is a little out of touch. His idea was that the dealers need to incentivize the vehicle by maybe helping pay a younger person's insurance premiums if they can prove their driving record is good, or pay their taxes on the purchase or whatever. And granted, this isn't going to happen, guys. Dealers are independent business operations. It's going to happen at the corporate level of the manufacturer. And even if a dealer is saying, hey, I'm going to pay your taxes or whatever, you're paying for that somehow. Okay, let's just be honest. Those are all, games that you can play with the numbers. So even if they're saying they're going to pay your taxes or they're going to give you a warranty or whatever, a lot of times that is still built into the cost of the car. So, guys, this is what we call garage table discussion. So join in, comment down in the comments section and let me know what you think. Again, back to the question of, if you were in charge of Ford, what would you do to try to start attracting a younger crowd to the Mustang again? And let's clarify again, the Mustang EcoBoost is a fine car, and it's actually maybe more powerful than a lot of our previous generation GTs, but again, people, I think younger people, any of us, we want that GT, we want that power, and we want that sound. Guys, that's pretty much the gist of it here. Jeff Black, your BFP Dream Builder from Beachmont Ford Performance, out here in the garage asking for your opinion and your discussion on the subject of younger people purchasing the Mustang. All right, thanks so much. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.